So, welcome to Russian history. So we're going to do Russian history 101. We have to cover it very quickly. I could do a whole class easily on Russian history because it's fascinating. So let us begin with where the Slavic people started from. Where did the Slavic people come from?
Ukraine.
Yeah, the Ukraine. So we know that the Ukraine is very, very close. It's in Europe, of course. Very, very close to the Russian borders. What is the ancestries that made up the Slavs that began pretty much centered in where Kyiv is today, the capital of the Ukraine? Asian ancestry, sure. Central Asian, which is very close by also. What else? European, sure. Goths. Nordic, absolutely. There's Viking blood, Nordic blood. Sure, so there's some fierce, strong stocks that make up the Slavic Russian stock. Okay, so from where they were in Kyiv, why did they leave Kyiv and head to Moscow? Mongol invasion. Tatars, very fierce steppe people. We did briefly talk about Amazonian women, which is a whole other story, and about the Amazonian women, which were traced in ancestry to actually come from the steppes here. And they were so fierce that they would ride horseback. They were buried with their bows and buried with their horses. But the Amazonian women, Asian women, are occasionally born today with blonde hair and blue eyes. From that area, that's something interesting to look up on your own. So the Slavic people invaded. What was the general time frame? Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it was all through the 1400s, 1500s when the Mongols were getting tribute from much of Europe, and the Tatars and Mongols lost their lands that they were getting tribute from and controlling in World War I. Yeah, the Europeans took those lands from them, and there was the time of, what was the big era that went roughly from that time of the end of the Tatar invasion all the way, then it was the Tsarist times. Okay, so do we have the time frame straight? What's the general time frame of the Tsars? Let's see if you can do this.
16th
Okay, we'll just give it roughly the 1600s until, let's just say 1917. Okay, because that was really the end of the Tsars with the People's Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution that occurred where the Tsars were overthrown. So let's talk a little bit about the time of the Tsars. So during the time of the Tsars, let's go back to the Slavs moving because they were being chased by the Tatars, so they moved to Moscow. And really, it's not a huge group of people. Even today, Russia isn't a huge group of people. So they are living there and starting to expand during the time of the Tsars. So who is the first real Tsar?
Ivan the Terrible.
Ivan the Terrible, yes. Lots of atrocities committed, but he had to be a tough guy because he had to get the Slavs away from the Tatars, the Mongols, and so he was very tough. And during that time, there was not much land, but then during the next few Tsars, there was so much land expansion. So let's look at that a little bit. What was the next really well-known Tsar?
Peter the Great.
Peter the Great. And during that time, Peter the Great, during that time, there was a great love for Europe. Europe was starting to really boom, you know, the Enlightenment, all of that. So There was a lot of expansion out towards Europe and this way too. And actually the capital was moved from Moscow. They call it a forward capital when you move it forward to try to get people to live there. So it was progressive and forward to go to St. Petersburg as the capital during those times. And there was just a lot of love for Europe, and it was really good times. And so the next main czar, where there was a lot, even more expansion, was Catherine the Great. So under Catherine the Great, wow, look at the expansion that happened there. That time, there were lands taken from Chinese. There were lands taken from many different ethnicities. Some of them were Muslim. There was lands taken here in the Caucasus, which later were to become very problematic. These are ethnicities that live up in the mountains here. So many of these lands were taken. And so we know that if we ask at what time what did this expansion occur? Was it during the time of the czars, or was it during the time of the Soviets? What would you say?
Czars.
Yes, during the time of the czars. Very good. So this is when most of this expansion did occur.